The Supreme Court's been busy. They just fired back up. These all are going through. Welcome to the Doug TeNapel channel. This is where the happy patriots are. How does this affect Trump? It affects a whole lot of Trump. And that means it's good that we have guys like Clarence Thomas and Alito on our side. And then there's the iffy, squishy Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts. But we'll see how they rule on these. Let's watch. I've got two articles here. This one's at USA Today, so it's going to be covered with ads, with apologies. Supreme Court to decide if public charter schools can be religious. I'll give you guys my prediction on this one. First, let's read the article. The U.S. Constitution keeps the government from establishing a religion, but also says the government can't prohibit the free exercise of religion. And there you go. I don't have to even make my prediction on this one, but just so you know, that's what's at stake. And of course, the Democrats hate religion. They think that the prevention of establishing means you prevent the free exercise of religion. Washington, the Supreme Court on Friday said it will decide whether Oklahoma can create the nation's first religious charter school in a case that could continue a streak of rulings in recent years permitting taxpayer funds to be used for faith-based programs. I have, again, one suit that I'd like to tell you guys about, but first let's get through the article. The case is also notable because the state's Republican governor and attorney general had opposing positions on funding the school. The U.S. Constitution prohibits the government from establishing a religion, but also says the government cannot prohibit people from freely exercising religion. In some recent cases where those portions of the Constitution have been in tension, the Supreme Court came down on the side of protecting religious exercise, because that's actually in the Constitution, blurring the line of separation of church and state, and the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. That should also give you a hint on this stuff. In 2022, the court said Maine couldn't exclude religious schools from an indirect aid program, that's the key, indirect, based on schools' religious use of funds. In 2020, so that is the school wanted to teach math, but it happened to be a Christian school. What does the government care if it's a Christian school that happens to be teaching math? Many of our schools are atheistic. That makes a religious statement against God, and we still fund them. In 2020, the court said a Montana scholarship program could not exclude religious schools if the program was open to any private schools. There's another one, you just can't discriminate based on religion. So like a Catholic school couldn't deny an education to a Protestant student. In 2017, the court backed a church's challenge to its exclusion from a Missouri grant program to resurface the playgrounds. If they're public playgrounds used at a church or something in Missouri, they tried to stop them from being resurfaced and made safe. Under the same reasoning, the Archdiocese of Oklahoma and the Diocese of Tulsa said they should be able to operate a K through 12 charter school, even though the curriculum would include religious instruction. True. But the Oklahoma Supreme Court ruled last year that charter schools, this is Oklahoma, guys, one of the most conservative states in the country, ripping on the church, which use taxpayer money but have private operators. Our public schools and state law requires public education to be secular. That's establishment of a theocracy, I say. Oklahoma's charter schools bear all of the hallmarks of a public school identified by this court and more, unquote. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond, a Republican, told the U.S. Supreme Court, urging them not to get involved. Drummond has said allowing the Catholic charter school would, quote, open the floodgates and force taxpayers to fund all manner of religious indoctrination, including radical Islam or even the Church of Satan, unquote. So they had to get a Republican to carry that position, saying, oh, if the state funds this, it has to fund the Church of Satan. Oklahoma government, and by the way, a Republican, now here's Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, a Republican who backs the charter school, so this is a good Republican lawyer versus a bad Republican lawyer, filed a brief criticizing the Attorney General's open hostility against religion. This proposed Saint Isidore of Seville Catholic virtual school has been narrowly approved in 2023 by a government governing board for charter schools. Attorneys for the board, which is represented by the conservative legal advocacy group Alliance Defending Freedom. We're big fans of them. By the way, almost every conservative lawsuit that goes before the Supreme Court is funded by the Alliance Defending Freedom. They're like an anti-Soros. Told the justices they should step in because, quote, the religious parents are being penalized for seeking to exercise their religion, unquote. So that already cuts against our state laws. You cannot prohibit the free exercise thereof. Their appeal, as well as a separate one filed by the Catholic Church, had the backing of multiple conservative and religious groups and 8 conservative states. The states said they need clarity from the Supreme Court about how charter schools can operate. So this is going to set precedent. If this takes off in Oklahoma, boom, this goes all across the United States with Supreme Court backing. That's why this is important, guys. The National Alliance for Public Charter Schools oppose the creation of St. Isidore public charter schools are joint undertakings with the state and must accept the rights and responsibilities that come with that, the group told the Supreme Court. This case will be argued in spring with a decision expected by summer, but they have agreed to take it up. Now, here's why this is going to go through. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in the years of George Bush, I believe it was in the mid-2000s, there was this big thing where people wanted to have drug-free programs, not drug-free, but like the ones where they get you off of drugs, like Alcoholics Anonymous, or it was like faith-based sobriety counseling. The government, George Bush, asked why not fund faith-based drug counseling if it gets people off drugs, and the government wants them off drugs. And if Faith and Alcoholics Anonymous, or one run out of a church, is effective at getting people off drugs, why wouldn't the United States want to fund that? And they did indeed fund these faith-based institutions that provided public services like that. It's no different than if they provide an education. I believe this Supreme Court case is definitely going to support the private Christian schools. Trump's just saying they should get the same tax benefit. Really, the money should follow the kid. You know, whatever school you put them in, there's no reason why you should have to raise taxes that will only pay for a kid to go to a secular school. If he goes to another school, Mormon school, Catholic school, Jehovah's Witness school, Islam school, I don't know, so long as he's learning and his test scores show that they're learning the work, the government should be okay with paying for it. Now, here's another case that we got to take up. This is over at the Hill. Okay, here we go. At the Hill, we have Trump's Department of Justice, that is the new Department of Justice, asked the Supreme Court to freeze cases on student debt and the environment. So they're going to say, well, we'll read the article, but they're going to say, you know, those are all Biden things and we no longer should be considering them. So Biden was trying to forgive student debt on kids that got their masters. They borrowed money and then didn't want to pay it back. And Biden said, we'll forgive all your debt at the cost of, billions of dollars. President Trump's Justice Department on Friday asked the Supreme Court to freeze four pending cases implicating the environment or student debt as the new administration considers reversing the regulatory decisions underlying the lawsuits. So they're not going to apply anymore if you remove what's underlying them. Quote, after the change in administration, Acting Solicitor General Sarah Harris told the justices in a series of motions, the government will, quote, reassess the basis for and soundness of the Biden-era actions, meaning they're going to get reversed. None of the four cases has been scheduled for oral arguments, but they were teed up to be heard during the court's March or April sessions and be decided this term. The Justice Department asked to halt all written briefing deadlines, which would put the cases on indefinite hold. The new motions leave the door open, quote, to have the briefing schedule reinstated should the matter not be resolved, unquote, in any of the cases. But the filings signal the disputes may become moot as the Trump administration moves to reverse the very decisions that spurred the legal challenges. So, for instance, they can Biden made by executive order, said to forgive the student loans, which the Supreme Court said that was unconstitutional. But now Trump can just reverse that presidential order, and then the whole thing goes away anyways. It remains unclear how the new Justice Department will handle the other pending cases it took over from the Biden administration that are further along at the Supreme Court, particularly the fight over gender-affirming care bans for minors. So that was one where Biden would not stop giving gender-bending drugs to youth, underage kids, and Trump is going to reinstate that and say you cannot do trans things and all that to kids. In one case, the Supreme Court is hearing the government's appeal by a decision blocking a Biden administration rule that eases the ability for students to receive debt forgiveness if they were defrauded by their college. The motion indicates the challengers don't oppose halting the case as the new administration weighs rescinding the rule. The other three cases implicate environmental regulations, which all got to go, and court filings show at least one party in each is objecting to halting the schedule. Weeks after the election, the Supreme Court agreed to consider reviving the oil and biofuel industry's bid to axe California's Clean Cars program reinstated by Biden's Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, which would mandate stricter than federal vehicle emissions and standards. The Trump administration also asked the Supreme Court to halt two other environmental cases, which both consider what venue plaintiffs can sue in when challenging certain EPA actions. One arises from a dispute over whether Oklahoma and Utah need to come up with better plans to fight smog, while the other concerns whether some oil refineries can be exempt from requirements that their gasoline contain a percentage of ethanol, which is government pork, and it must be ended. The Trump administration has not yet sought to reverse its position on any pending case, though it could still do so. And we're going to find out this week. They ran these up. There's every time the Supreme Court opens up, where you can apply, present cases to them, just a ton of them go through. Boom, 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 boom. And in this case, the Trump people are saying, no, we want to remove these cases from your docket because the underlying laws no longer apply because they were invented by Biden. New ones, Trump's going back to the way that it was. I think all of these look very good at the Supreme Court to agree with Trump. What do you guys think? Is not Clarence Thomas our guy? Are not those conservatives on the Supreme Court our people? Or will they take these up? If they do, you know where to go to find out about the Supreme Court. Here's another video. And if you like this stuff, then subscribe right here. Get us over 60,000 subs. I'm Doug in exile.